the reality of the ultimate sacrifice hits so close to home.
At our house, he is the known.
Sometimes you just gotta use the right thing.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to That Voiceover Podcast, the show for and about the voiceover profession. I'm Stephen Cox. Now, those of us in the industry would know that Joe Ciprano would be a shoo-in guest for this show under any circumstances for his work as one of the most recognizable promo and trailer voices out there. But we are especially excited to welcome him as the second annual recipient of the Promax BDA Don LaFontaine Legacy Award. It's given to those in the business who exemplify character, longevity, talent, professionalism, and the passion for giving back. So, Joe Ciprano, welcome to That Voiceover Podcast.
Well, thanks, Stephen. I appreciate that. That's a wonderful intro.
Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations on the award.
Well, thanks very much. It was quite a shock to me. In fact, when Promax called, I said, "Are you sure you didn't mix up the ballots?" But it's quite an honor. I'm stunned.
Well, yeah, and I want to talk about your work in voiceover at length. But first, let's talk a little bit about Don LaFontaine. What does it mean to you to be named to this award?
Well, you know what? For the past year and a half, Paul Pape and I, Paul was best friends with Don, along with George Whittam, we've been working on the Don LaFontaine Voiceover Lab, which opens in just a week at the Actors Center, Screen Actors Guild Foundation.
Very exciting.
And so we've been kind of dedicated to, keeping his legacy alive and giving back to the community. And to also, on top of that, be honored with this amazing award, it's a little bit overwhelming. Don was, a pretty incredible guy for the stature that he enjoyed in the voiceover community. He was all about giving back, and his legendary ride-alongs in the Don LaFontaine limo, everyone knows about those, and in fact, his agent at one point had to step in and say, "You don't know most of these people that are getting in your limo. I'm concerned, But Don was all about teaching and giving back, and he felt that, it was the best way to learn was to watch, and you just couldn't do better than watching the best. To just have my name and his name in the same sentence is an unbelievable honor. So it means a lot to me.
I got to talk shop with him at a recording session once when we happened to be together, and I was just struck by what a nice and really humble guy he was. You're right, for his stature. He really seemed to have a very big heart. Do you have a particular Don LaFontaine story that's your favorite?
Well, gosh, there are so many. Don and I were involved in writing chapters in a book, The Secrets of Voiceover Success by Joan Baker. And when the book was about to be launched, Joan had come out to Los Angeles we hadn't even met Joan. So it was kind of, a chance. We had written our chapters and we were going to get together. And we went out to dinner in Los Angeles, and George DeLoyo was there and Sylvia Viagran. And I was sitting next to Don, and we're going over the menu, and everyone's talking. And he says, he turns to me and goes, "Joey, I think we should order the caviar." And I was like, looked down at the menu, and the caviar was $320. I mean, that's what he wanted to order as an appetizer. And I said, "Don, it's $320. He goes, "Joey, it's a spot in a tag. Come on." So that's how Don thought about stuff. Everything was boiled down to a spot in a tag.
Yeah, that's how he quantified things, I guess. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the Don LaFontaine Voiceover Lab at the SAG Foundation Actors Center. You were one of the co-founders of that, as you mentioned. Talk a little bit about what that's going to do. You're going to foster young voiceover talent, as I understand it.
Right. We open the doors on June 25th, and probably the programs will start up about a month after that. We have to, get through testing the studio and making sure that it's working properly. It's an amazing center for voiceover, and we hope it'll be kind of like the nerve center for the voiceover community. We're just looking forward to having people stop by, doing things as simple as having a little coffee chat, and it's just a place to get together because so many of us are in our individual studios, and that sense of community is gone. Back in the day when Don and I were working at studios, we would see each other maybe 3-4 times a day, just going from studio to studio, and that's lost. So that's part of it, is to have this, start up this community and a place where people can gather. And there are 2 studios. One is the main booth, which will hold up to 6 actors, and quite frankly, it'll hold more than that. And that can be used for workshops and seminars, for anything from ADR and looping to animation, commercial acting. We also have a solo booth, which can be booked by individuals to work on anything from demos or auditions. If you have a session to do and you need to do an ISDN session and you don't have a studio at home, well, you can book the Don LaFontaine Voiceover Lab and just sign up for the solo booth for 15 minutes or a half hour. And it's absolutely free to union members, all performance unions. For non-union talent, it'll be a very small donation to the lab, which will allow you to utilize all of the facilities and what we're offering. And again, it'll be seminars and workshops and taught by the best in the business, and it'll all be absolutely free.
Well, it sounds like an incredible resource. I will be sure to provide some information on that when it is completed and up and going on the website here. I'd like to talk about your work a little bit. You began your career in radio in high school, as I understand it. What point did you start to transition into voiceover?
Well, I always knew I got into radio early on because my dream was to get into television at some point, and I thought, well, here I am in Oakville, Connecticut. What can I do? I can get into radio and at least get a foot into broadcasting, and then I hoped that I would be able to transition to something that would lead to television. I moved to Washington, D.C., and I was working for NBC there in the mid-'70s, and it's a big market, and I noticed that, when commercials were coming in, part of the job was to, at that time, cart up, the commercials. And they'd be coming in from studios and ad agencies from all over the East Coast. And I thought, this is something that I can do, and this can forward my career. I had gotten into listening to promo voiceover guys on the networks, people like Danny Dark and Ernie Anderson. And while I didn't have a voice like them, I thought, this would be something I would love to do. It kind of feathers in with radio and being a disc jockey. You're talking up intros, and you have to talk for 14.2 seconds. Well, promo is the same thing. You're almost talking up a record. You're talking in between sound bites.
That's right.
So I started sending out my demo back in the mid-'70s and started to pick up work regionally, from Washington, D.C., and then quickly learned that, okay, I either, there was no such thing as ISDN. I either need to be in New York, Chicago, or Los Angeles. Chicago I wasn't interested in. New York or L.A. I was. And my wife and I took a trip where we spent 5 days in New York and then 5 days in Los Angeles, and we decided, I think I like this Los Angeles thing. So when I moved out here, I waited until I had a radio job. I'm big on not giving up the day job. I found a radio position that brought me out here, and then it was my mission to make voiceover a full-time job. And it took me we moved out in 1980, and I finally gave up radio about 1991. So it took me about 10, 11 years.
Wow. Now you became the voice of what was then the brand new Fox network in 1988, and that, I would imagine that would have allowed you the luxury of quitting the day job, but I guess you hung on to radio for a while after that.
Yeah, you can't trust that voiceover income.
Well, we know that story, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even though I was doing well and I could have, at any time given it up, I just didn't trust it, and so it took me a couple of years before I said, okay, I'm willing to give up radio and go full time into voiceovers. I think it's good to be a little overly cautious. You have to be very careful. If you give up your day job, and then you find yourself in a position where you desperately need voiceovers to make money, you're working against yourself. Going into an audition, meeting a casting director, and starving and needing that job, you're not going to get it. They could just smell the desperation on you. so I always tried to make sure that our living expenses were taken care of. My wife was working as well in broadcasting. And so we had a nice living while, pursuing the voiceover.
You have rebranded networks. First off, I think you really were instrumental in sort of establishing Fox Network's sound. And then you also helped rebrand CBS Comedy in 97, Dramas for NBC in 2005. Talk a little bit about how your sound has evolved along with these campaigns.
And I'm running out of networks too, Stephan. I'm getting worried. With Fox, at the time, what I alluded to earlier, the guys that were doing promos, the lion's share of promos were very, very deep voiced.
That's right.
Those golden, beautiful tones. And Fox came on and decided that they were going to flip everything. They were not going to do the safe programming. They were going to do outrageous programming and kind of shocking programming. And they thought, well, okay, we don't want our network to look or sound like the rest of the networks. And so they decided, well, we're going to go with a youthful voice, which was a huge departure. There were only a few people that were, Mark Elliott was doing comedies at CBS, and he had a rather youthful voice. But Fox decided that's what we're going to do, and it made an impression. Not only the sound, but the look. The graphics were bold, and when you were watching Fox, you knew that this was completely different. So it was part of an overall image that they were creating. And something that I always say about voiceovers, it's based on, so much of it is relationships. And one of the creative directors of Fox in 1997 moved over to CBS, which was the blue-haired lady network.
Right, at the time, sure.
And he was charged with helping to change the image and young it up. And because of my relationship with him and what we had done together at Fox, they looked at a lot of different, listened to a lot of different voices for this new CBS comedy image, and they called me and said, you know what, we keep coming back to you, and I was thrilled. So having relationships within the business and keeping those relationships and enjoying them and watching them continue on is such a big part of the business.
Sure.
So I've enjoyed that. I've been at CBS since 1997. NBC was just looking for a change, and they do this often especially in their dramas and how to image them. And that was a cold audition, and nobody thought that I could do drama, including myself. But it goes back to Don LaFontaine. He one time said to me, he said, your speaking voice is such a lower register than your performance voice when you're doing comedies for Fox and CBS. He said, I really think that you ought to explore where you live in that speaking voice, which was drama. And I heard from a friend, from George DeLoyo, who's a voiceover artist, that NBC was looking to change their drama voice. And I cobbled together a fake demo, that I made in my studio at
That's
home.
the way we do it, yeah.
Yep, and played it for my agent, and they were quite surprised. And they submitted it, and lo and behold, they bought it. And they said, yeah, we think we're going to start using Joe. I don't even know if they knew that I worked at CBS and Fox as a comedy voice. I think I was new to them. And I enjoyed about a year and a half, doing their dramas. And they continue to evolve. All the networks do. And for us, Stephan, you and me and everyone in voiceover, I think we have to keep up with the trends and bend your style and mold it and keep it current so that we can stay working in the business.
Yeah, it is constantly changing, and it's very imperative, and I say this to anybody working in the business, and a number of guests on the show have said the same thing. You have to constantly be listening. You have to resist the urge to fast forward with your TiVo through the commercials and the promos, and you really have to pay attention to what's going on because that's what people are casting.
Yeah, so true.
Now, in addition to your promo work, you also do some English translations on Iron Chef. That must be a blast.
It is fun. It's actually the American version. It's Iron Chef America. And I interpret Chef Morimoto. And I think we're probably in our 7th season. And at the beginning, it made sense because Morimoto mostly spoke in Japanese. And we kept it very campy to kind of match the Japanese version of the show, which had a good camp factor going to it.
Yeah.
And but now, as the years have gone by, Chef Morimoto is speaking more and more in English and quite comfortable with it. Yet I'm still interpreting what he says, which adds even more camp to the to the exercise. So it's quite fun, and we have a blast when we do those recording sessions. And those are, one of the rare recording sessions where I go in, and I relish that, and I love that, to be able to be in there and ad-libbing and working on what we're doing and what we're interpreting for poor old Chef Morimoto.
Well, Joe Ciprano, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with us on the show today, and once again, congratulations on the LaFontaine Award. That's a big deal. Thanks,
Steph, and I really appreciate it. This was fun, and like I said, it's such a great honor just to have my name in the same sentence as the great Don LaFontaine, and I'm certainly humbled by it. So thanks very much.
Well, be well, and we'll see you at Promax.
Thanks, Steph.
Special thanks go to Laura Hart at Beck Media and Marketing. That Voiceover Podcast is a co-production of Half Full and Get Creative Inc. Thanks for listening. I'm Stephen Cox.